What's up, you guys? I'm Eric and welcome back to my channel. No, you grow up. I know you're probably expecting to see part 3 of my collection cleaning and reset tour next, but I'm actually going to be putting that on the back burner for a little bit. It's going to take me a long time to do all that stuff, and honestly I just don't feel like doing it right now. So that part will come later. I'm probably going to try to knock that out over Labor Day weekend since I'll have a long weekend to do all that stuff. But today I kind of wanted to just start getting into the meat and potatoes of what I want to do with this channel. So for today's video, I wanted to talk about the Super7 TMNT line and the NECA Toon TMNT line. This isn't going to be like a regular versus style video. I don't even like to directly compare the two lines. I think they're not really even that comparable. They're two totally different scales, price points, and they're going for completely different aesthetics. So I can understand if you subjectively prefer one of those over the other. But before I start this video, I want to throw this disclaimer out there. I haven't been living on Mars for the last 3 years in a cave with my eyes shut and my fingers in my ears. I'm fully aware of all the criticisms and concerns with both these lines, and I feel the same way that a lot of you do about a lot of that stuff. Every time I open up new NECA figures, I am terrified to pose them, even though I have never broken a NECA figure. I definitely think some of the Super7 TMNT figures are overpriced, but I still buy them. I'm good at just focusing on the positive and accepting the negative, and that's just kind of how I go about collecting. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Nothing is ever going to be exactly what you want, the way you want it. But just the fact that I'm getting things I love just makes me really happy. Negativity sells, I understand that. It's really easy to dogpile on something and try to get views just based off what people are pissed off about at the time. It's really easy to build up a straw man and destroy it on your own channel when you control 100% of the narrative and you have nobody giving you counterpoints. But those are like the last directions that I ever want to take this channel. I started this channel to have fun. I want you guys to have fun, and that's probably why you're here in the first place. You didn't click on this video to listen to me bitch and complain about things. So if you want to see a video bashing on QC, distribution, pricing, or lecturing you for wanting to buy things that have meaning to you, that you love, there's plenty of bigger and better channels where you can get that content from. But that's not at all what you're going to get here today. You're here because you want to have fun. I want to have fun, and that's what you're going to get from this channel. So with all that crap out of the way, let's get started. My earliest memories go back to when I was about 3, and I definitely don't remember very much, but the one thing I do remember is how much I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And the two things that I loved the most were the original cartoon and the action figures they were made to sell. Although the cartoon was the driving force of the Playmates toy line, the character designs were kind of an amalgamation of the comics and the cartoon, and eventually they even started throwing in original characters that I don't think were in any type of media at all. As a kid, I didn't know much about the Mirage or Archie comics series. Like most kids in my age bracket, I always assumed the designs were based off the cartoon, which also confused me. Why did my Slash figure look so cool and menacing while the cartoon character looked and acted like a dope? It wasn't until later in my adult years that I realized the action figure was based off the Archie comics version, and at the time, I definitely think that was the right call to make. But now, thanks to NECA, I own that dopey looking Slash, and I couldn't be happier about it. With NECA, we're getting something we've never been given before, figures based directly off the original TMNT cartoon. While the articulation can be a little bit scary at times, the sculpts themselves are excellent, not you, but the deco definitely is the strongest aspect of the line. Again, the molds are great, but the deco is what gives them that look like they were just pulled out of the TV screen. Paint tones along with the heavy line work makes these figures feel like someone took an animation cell and just draped it over the molds. I don't think any company has ever pulled off the animated series gimmick as well as NECA has with this line, and the best part is, they just keep getting better at what they're already great at. The amount of progress they've made from their original Turtles molds is crazy. The original ones didn't look bad by any means, but these new animated Turtles look great. Their faces just have so much more life to them. But I think the Ground Chuck is my favorite example of what they're capable of now. I think he's the pinnacle of what they have to offer in the deco department, and objectively, I think he's the best looking figure that they've put out so far, but I definitely think there's plenty of figures that could be in that argument. As I stated in my first video, the Super7 line is my favorite line, but I consider the NECA Toon line to be the main line that I collect. I consider it to not only be the anchor of my TMNT display, but my entire collection room. It is by far my biggest and deepest line, which is another thing I love. When there's a lot of stuff to buy, it's a lot of fun to collect, and that applies to both completionists and people who just cherry pick. If you're a completionist, it feels like you're getting new stuff all the time, and if you're a cherry picker, you just have more stuff to choose from. The line started really slow, but over the last 2 years, we've gotten an insane amount of figures. At the time of recording this, I have 64 unique characters and 10 on pre-order. And I'm excluding all the smaller characters like Roadkill Rodney, the Mousers, Joe Eyeball, and all the other little guys who are honestly just as cool as the full-size figures, but I just can't really count them as a figure. Where a lot of modern lines are filling their waves with repaints, NECA is turning out new figure after new figure after new figure. I happened to be listening to Geek Dad Life while I was writing this part of my script, and they just so happened to be talking about this line, and they brought up a point that I now have to completely rephrase to avoid plagiarism. So Jay asked John if he thought it was crazy to say this might become the definitive TMNT toy line, and I don't think it's crazy at all because that's exactly what I've been thinking for a while now. This line might not end up with the most total figures made, but I definitely think it's going to end up with the most original characters made. This line's been going on for over 3 years now, and in my opinion, we're just starting to get into the real deep cuts. Which brings me to my final thing that I love about the NECA Toon line, which is getting characters we've never gotten in action figure form until now. I always felt like the characters that had Playmates action figures seemed more important, and now that we're starting to get figures in the line, like Smash and that little turd Zack, it almost validates them more as characters, as weird as that sounds. Zack is like the perfect example. He was in, I think, 7 episodes of the OG cartoon, but I can barely remember him from my childhood. Then you have someone like Mondo, who was only in like 2 episodes, but as a kid, I thought he was a major character, just like all the Playmates figures were. I thought all the action figures were the main characters, and I just happened to miss all the episodes that they were in. Characters like Mondo just seemed way more important to me because he had an action figure. To me, that shows how important action figures are to kids. As a kid, I thought my TMNT headcanon was built off the cartoon, but now that I'm looking back, it was clearly built off the action figures. I love the cartoon, but clearly I love the toys more. Having a character in action figure form just made them seem more important to me, and as an adult, I just kinda still feel the same way. I was stoked to get Granitor with Trag, and soon we'll have Rock Soldiers, or Stone Warriors, whatever you want to call them. And if you throw Krang and the Neutrinos in the mix, you got a pretty sick Dimension X display, and no other line has given us that before. I'm in on the van, and I'm most likely going all in on the sewer layer as well. Can't wait to see what else they give us to help build this world from one of my favorite childhood cartoons. Moving over to Super7, they're pretty much doing the exact opposite of what NECA is doing. Instead of giving us something we've never had before, they're giving us exactly what we've had before. They're doing modern takes on the original Playmates molds, and outside of Motu Origins, I think this is probably the most derivative line on the market right now, and I couldn't possibly be happier about that. Some people are trying to act like the idea of having an affinity to nostalgia makes you some sort of sap, but I'm fully aware of how driven I am by it, and I'm okay with it. In fact, I'm more than okay with it. I've never lost my childlike sense of wonder, and I couldn't be happier about that. I can't explain to you the joy I get when I walk in my collection room, and it's not because it's filled with cool things. It's filled with cool things that I love, that have meaning to me, because they've stuck with me my whole life, not just my childhood. A cool figure is a cool figure, but the first thing I learned when I got back into collecting is that eventually, that's all it'll be. I've sold off and shaved down my collection to where I'm only keeping or buying things that have meaning to me going forward, because that's what never gets old. Those are the figures that I look at every single day, and they bring me just as much joy as the day I got them. Almost every single thing in my room means something to me, and if it doesn't, it probably won't be in here much longer. I guarantee I could draw a perfect diagram of my room with exactly what's on every shelf and exactly where it is, because everything in there was placed with thought, purpose, and care. And I know I've gone on a tangent, but I promise it's all going to come back to Super7 figures, and should give you a good idea of how much emotion these figures embarrassingly stir in a grown-ass man. It was very hard to write this portion of the video without talking a ton about the OG Playmates line. In fact, I wrote so much about the OG Playmates line that I ended up just cutting it all out to start a completely separate video. So to be as concise as possible, so I can actually start talking about Super7, halfway through my part about Super7, the OG Playmates line means more to me than any other line, and it's pretty much the catalyst for my entire action figure collection that I have today. I couldn't have been happier that I was going to get modern figures based off my favorite, most fondly remembered action figure line. So obviously I went all in on the first wave and the second wave, and I doubt very much it was by design, but the first figure I actually got wasn't from either of those waves. It was the SDCC glow-in-the-dark Baxter Stockman, and it blew me away. It's not like their promo pictures were terrible, but I feel like they criminally undersold how sick these figures are. Once Wave 1 finally hit, my expectations couldn't have been any higher, and they were still exceeded. I have no problem admitting that it was the nostalgic appeal of the OG Playmates line that got me hooked, but it was the amazing sculpting and paint apps that made this line what it is for me. I love nostalgia, but I'm not a rube. If the only thing these figures had going for them was a nostalgic appeal, the novelty would have worn off fast. Once Wave 1 hit and I opened up Raph and started playing with him, he instantly took my #1 favorite action figure spot and hasn't given it up since. Just like NECA, Super7 also killed it in both the sculpt and deco departments. But also like NECA, one of these attributes makes the line what it is for me, and with Super7, it's these phenomenal sculpts. And that's no surprise, as they were done by the best in the biz. If you don't know, these figures were sculpted by 4 Horsemen Studios. If you don't know who they are, in my opinion, they're the best sculptors in the game. If you need further proof, check out their Mythic Legions and Cosmic Legions lines. You can see how much love they put into their lines, and without a doubt, those dudes love the Turtles. The Horsemen perfectly captured the spirit and charm of the OG Playmates figures while giving every character so much more presence and attitude. It's like they took the old figures, gave them steroids, and converted them from SD to HD. One of my favorite things about this line is how much they got to play with the scale. The OG Playmates line had to keep all the figures within a relative size to make sure they all fit in the bubble, so bigger characters and smaller characters didn't really vary a whole lot in size. Fortunately, the Horsemen weren't given any constraints when it came to limiting the size of the figures, and they absolutely took full advantage of that. All the figures are a good solid size, but the big figures are big. Really big. They took full advantage of these bigger sculpts by packing them with a ton of detail and topping it off with some of the best paint apps of any figures that I have. The original Playmates line was infamous for cutting costs by limiting deco on characters, and like a bad inker can destroy a great artist's pencils, it hid the true beauty of some of the original sculpts. There's a reason everyone was so stoked on Bebop when he came out, and again, pictures just don't do him justice. He's big, menacing, and packed with so much detail. He's definitely a top 5 figure in my collection. The detailing on his piercings, his leg brace, the buttons, they're just perfectly sculpted, and the deco just makes everything pop. The detail of this figure is unbelievable. And as great as this Bebop figure is, I think Muckman kinda showed up and ate his lunch. Super7 Raph is my all-time favorite figure, but there's a lot of bias that goes into that. Raph and Casey are my 2 favorite characters, so I'll almost always have an affinity towards them. But I am self-aware enough to know when something is subjectively or objectively better, and objectively, Muckman is the best figure in my collection. Everything that made Bebop so great is turned up to 11 with Muckman. In my opinion, OG Playmates Muckman was their most ambitiously sculpted figure in the line, but unfortunately, he was stripped of a lot of the deco we needed to really emphasize this mold for his retail release. The Horsemen clearly went all out on this one, and I know I keep harping on this, but I cannot stress it enough how amazing this figure is in hand, and pictures will never do him justice. He is one figure that I do believe is well worth the cost. While Super7 gave us these figures, the Horsemen are without a doubt the heart and soul of this line. Without the love and effort they clearly put in these figures, I wouldn't be here talking about them right now. The nostalgia wouldn't have been enough. I cannot give the Horsemen enough of my praise and gratitude for this line, and to Super7 for knowing that hiring the best will result in the best. The reason I love this line is the exact opposite of why I love the NECA line. The NECA line is greater than the sum of its parts. I feel like I'm building a world of the cartoon with that line. With Super7, it's the beauty of each individual figure on its own that I love so much. Every figure in this line, not you, is a damn near masterpiece of sculpting thanks to the Horsemen. Every figure in this line, not you, just stands so strong on its own. I talked earlier about how exciting the NECA line is because of the volume, and again, I love the exact opposite of what Super7 is giving me. When I get a Super7 wave, it's so few and far between, it feels like Christmas when I get them. I just can't put into words how happy these figures make me. Are they overpriced? For the majority of them, I would say yes. But will that ever stop me from being all in on this line? Hell no, as far as the figures are concerned. I will continue to overpay for every figure they put out the second it goes up for pre-order, and I'll be stoked to do it. Money doesn't make me happy. The people in my life, my pets, my room full of paper and plastic are what make me happy, and I will never think twice about how much money I spend on them as long as I have the means to do it. I'm lucky enough to live with someone I love, with our wonderful pets, and to have a room filled with things that mean much more to me than they should to a grown-ass man. But these things aren't just things to me. They're memories, gifts, and so much more to me than the plastic and paper they're made from. And if a day ever comes where I don't feel that way, I'd let it all go, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. No matter which line you prefer, there is no question that this is the best time there has ever been to be a TMNT fan or a collector. We have so many amazing lines that even someone as financially irresponsible as me can't keep up with them all anymore. Collect the things that make you happy, collect the things you love, but most importantly, just make sure you're having fun doing it. Otherwise, what's the point? Thank you to anyone who's watched any of my videos, and thank everyone that has subscribed to my channel. Just went over 100 subscribers and it feels pretty freaking good. So again, just thank you guys so much. I'm gonna keep doing this as long as you guys want to listen to what I have to say. And yeah, just take it easy, be safe, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace. But for real though, why is it so hard to get April right?